How much money do you need to buy your first rental property? This is a great question I get asked all the time, and in today's video I'm going to share with you the answer to that question, but I'm going to actually go way beyond that as well and show you how you can get that money way faster than just simply saving it up in your bank account. What's up guys, it's James Allen, the out-of-state investor, and before I get started, do me a favor and support the channel by smashing that like button, and if you haven't already done so, definitely subscribe and hit that notification bell to watch more content like this. And with that said, let's jump into it. So for this video, I'm excited to take you guys through a journey what it would be like to buy your first rental property, and throughout the video, we're going to be referring to this sample rental property that we're looking to buy. Now normally I like to use $100,000 houses for examples because the math is really easy on that, but in today's world, it's really hard to find a quality property in a decent area that's going for $100,000 or less. So for our sample rental property, we're going to be looking at a $150,000 single family house because that's a little more realistic and in line with what a decent property can be found for. Now the first place we're going to start is the down payment. Now the down payment is really going to vary depending on the type of property you're looking to buy. So for a single family, you're typically looking at 20% down. Some lenders may let you go as low as 15% down. That's going to come with an added cost of PMI. That's your private mortgage insurance, which is an extra monthly cost you're going to have to pay for putting less than 20% down. But in general, I would expect to pay around 20% down for a single family house. So for our sample rental property, that's going to be looking at a $30,000 down payment. Now let's say you're looking at a 2 to 4 unit building, a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex. Well, in that case, you're typically looking at a 25% down payment. Now if you're trying to go really big and you're looking at buying an apartment complex, which is typically looked at as 5 or more units, then it's going to vary because at that point you're dealing with commercial lenders only, and so for that reason, you could be anywhere from around 20% down to 30% down. So basically, for the most part, you're looking at 20% down minimum if you want to get into a rental property. But there is one exception, and that is house hacking. You see, if you were to buy a 2 to 4 unit property, say a duplex, triplex, fourplex, and you lived in the property, well, now you can get in for as little as 3.5% down. Now keep in mind, once again, you're going to have that extra mortgage insurance premium you're going to have to pay on a monthly basis, but it gets you into the property at a much lower cost, and in addition to that, you only have to live in it for 1 year before you're allowed to actually move out of it and rent the entire property out. So that's your down payment. The next thing you want to consider is your closing costs. So this is going to be your loan origination fees, your appraisal fees, your title and document fees. All those are part of your closing costs. Now in general, a good rule of thumb to budget for your closing costs is estimating about 3% of your purchase price. So in this case, if you were looking at a $150,000 property, you'd probably budget about $4,500. Now, if you're buying your rental property with a mortgage, which probably most of you are, then in that case, you're going to need to decide if you're going to escrow your taxes and insurance. Now, let me explain what I mean by escrowing your taxes and insurance. Typically, with a property, you have property taxes, and you have to pay homeowners insurance as a safety net in case something bad happens to the property. So you can pay on an annual basis, pay your property taxes, pay your homeowners insurance, or you can have what's like a savings account where you're paying into it on a monthly payment as part of your mortgage payment, and then at the end of the year, your mortgage provider will pay them off for you. So why would you choose to do this if you have the option? Well, the first reason you would is because many lenders actually incentivize buyers by offering a discount on the interest rate, maybe about 1/8 or 1/4%. Now the second reason is really convenience, and this is really a big reason why I like doing it, because as you start to build a rental portfolio and you have multiple property taxes to think about, multiple homeowner insurance policies to think about, it can become a real hassle to have to think about paying all these different payments and everything like that at the end of the year. Whereas if I just add it to my mortgage payment, I can set up auto pay, and then by the end of the year, I know it's already paid off. Now the one downside to doing this is it's going to require some money up front, which is known as prepaids. Now prepaids in general are just a payment in advance for your homeowner's insurance policy, your property taxes, your mortgage insurance, and sometimes even your mortgage insurance premium if you have that. So when you break it all down, how much is all of this going to cost? Well, here's a property I purchased back in 2017. It cost me roughly around $150,000. So based on that, you would assume with a 3% rule for closing costs, it'd probably be around $4,500. Well, looking at the closing disclosure for this property, the closing cost for the loan really came out to about $3,800, which if you add the taxes to that at around $800, that's around $4,600, so pretty close. Now it's important to note that the 3% rule I'm talking about doesn't account for prepaid, since that's an optional thing to do. So when you account for the prepaids as well, it really came out to a total cost of around $6,300. Now obviously, since prepaids are based on the property taxes and the homeowner's insurance policy, it can vary greatly depending on the area of the rental property. But if you really wanted to get specific and you wanted to get more accurate numbers, you can call your insurance provider. They'll give you free estimates, and you can go on the county assessor's website to get an idea of what the property taxes would be. The next thing you're going to want to budget for is your inspection. Now this is going to vary greatly depending on the size of the property you're buying. You could spend anywhere from a few $100 on a single family house to literally thousands of dollars on an apartment complex. But as a general rule of thumb, for single family houses, I would expect to pay anywhere from $275 to about $450 for a home inspection. Aside from that, you're also going to want to budget for a termite inspection, which is probably going to cost about $50–60. Now, one thing I recommend doing that a lot of investors miss is a sewer scope. This is when they put a video camera down the sewer lines to check the quality of the pipes, see what kind of shape they're in, to see if there's any blockages of any kind. And I'm telling you right now that this is going to be really good money spent. You see, on one hand, with the sewer scope, you may discover something really bad that's a complete deal breaker, and you're going to avoid that headache altogether because you did that inspection. And even if it's minor stuff that you're willing to take on as part of the property, now you have more information about the house you're buying, and you can use that information to renegotiate the price. Now, in general, for sewer scopes, I would budget anywhere from around $200 to $400 depending on the area you're in, but trust me, they're worth every penny. So in general, assuming no other red flags come up that I need additional inspections for, I would anticipate to spend anywhere from $600 to $900 for all my inspections. So let's just roughly say about $750 for this sample rental property. Now it's important to note that if you're looking at a small multifamily, a 2 to 4 unit property, that you're probably going to be paying more than what I talked about, that $275 to $450 range. I would add a little bit more than that as part of your budget. And if you're looking at a larger apartment complex over 5 units, I would budget around $150 a unit. And again, this is just talking about your regular home inspection. Now next we have repairs, and I would say regardless of the property you buy, plan to spend an extra $3,000 to $5,000 on just regular things that might have came up on the home inspection. Now aside from that, maybe you're looking at a fixer-upper house where you're doing a light cosmetic rehab, maybe a full cosmetic rehab, or maybe you're tearing it down to the studs. Obviously this can vary dramatically depending on the situation you're dealing with, depending on the location you're dealing with. So because of that, what I recommend doing if you want to get an accurate idea of what the repairs are going to cost on your rental property, try to get at least 3 estimates from contractors. This is going to be the best way to get an idea of what your rehab is going to cost, and what I recommend you do is try to get a labor-only bid from all your contractors, because when you do this, you're getting an apples-to-apples comparison. You see, materials can drastically vary depending on what kind of materials you're buying. You could buy a $20 light fixture, you could buy a $500 light fixture, and depending on what your contractor is planning on buying can drastically change what the estimate looks like. So for this reason, stick to labor-only bids when you're talking to your contractors, and that will give you the most accurate estimate. So for our sample rental property, we'll assume that we got our $3,000 in initial upfront maintenance repairs we got to do, and then after that, let's also assume an additional $15,000 in a light cosmetic rehab. Now the last thing you're going to want to consider when you're buying a rental property is your reserves. Now if you're working with a lender and you have a mortgage on the property, they're going to require that you have at least 6 months of reserves. So this is going to be 6 months of your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And honestly, this is not a bad thing. You really want to have at least 6 months, especially when it's your first rental property. In fact, what I would recommend you do is start with at least $5,000 of reserves, because if anything goes wrong, if an HVAC goes out, if a roof needs replacing, you're going to need more than just 6 months of reserves in many cases. So for this reason, I recommend starting with $5,000 of reserves, work your way up with your cash flow to about $10,000 of reserves, and that will cover just about every expense you need. Now, eventually over time, as your portfolio builds up, you're not going to keep doing $10,000 per rental property. I don't think that's necessary. Personally, what I like to do is 6 months of expenses across all my rental portfolio. So if we go back to our sample rental property, if we were looking to buy this $150,000 single family house, what would it cost us? Well, we have about $30,000 for our down payment, about $6,250 in our closing costs and prepaids. We'd have an additional $750 in inspections. We'd have roughly about $18,000 in repairs. And in addition to that, we have about $5,000 in reserves to start off with. So in total, we'd want about $60,000 in order to close on this property in a comfortable position. Now, let's say you're not planning on doing any kind of renovations to the property. You're still going to pay for the maintenance items because that's important, but you're not going to do the renovations anymore. So you could take away the $15,000 in renovations and you're looking more like about $45,000. So hopefully this gives you guys a good idea of how much you need to buy a rental property. Obviously, this can vary drastically depending on the area you live in. If you're buying a property in California, that could be drastically different than buying a house in Memphis, Tennessee. I also want to add that I understand it's not a very easy thing to save up all that kind of money. I mean, I saved up probably for about a year and a half, close to a year and a half, before I was able to buy my first rental property. And back then, the prices were a lot more affordable than they are now. But what I want to recommend is try not to sacrifice too much on the location in order to just get in the game. I definitely wouldn't want to see you guys getting tempted with like an $80,000 house in a D-class neighborhood where you're going to have problem tenants dealing with evictions and maybe they're tearing up the property. That is not the way you want to get started in real estate. So for that reason, that's why I like to target C to B grade areas, and so you can get that combination of cash flow and appreciation. Now, if the 20% down is too much, just go the house hacking route because that's only 3.5% down to get in the game. Yes, it is a little bit of a sacrifice to live in a duplex or a triplex, fourplex instead of a single family house. I was never able to get my wife on board with that, which is why I didn't do that. But honestly, I really believe that house hacking is the best way to get started in real estate investing. Then later down the road, once you build equity up, you can move out of it, you can hold it as a rental property, you can tap into it with a refinance or a HELOC, and then use that money to go buy rental properties in their own right. So if you do it that way, that could be a much faster way to save up that $45,000 for a rental property, especially if you're only making an average size income. At least it gives you a smaller amount you need to save up to get in the game, and then you can build up all that equity and use it eventually to go buy more rental properties. Anyways, with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you did and you found some value in today's video, do me a favor and smash that like button. And if you haven't already done so, definitely subscribe and hit that notification bell to watch more content like this. Also, if you're looking to buy a rental property for the first time, let me know in the comments below what type of property you're looking to buy. Are you looking to buy a single family, a condo? Are you looking to buy a multifamily property? Let me know in the comments below. Finally, follow me on TikTok and Instagram at The Out of State Investor. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.